Hello, NFT land. I'm CreatoriousRex. Sometimes I'm called Brett Kinsella, but all I really want you to do is be here and interested in what we have going on in NFT land. And someone I know that's always interested in NFT land is my co-host, Skot Leach.
How's it going?
It's going really well. I'm pretty excited. You moved your token frame to the other side.
I did.
Very important for me to know. Are you on the left or are you on the right? But you're now on my left third. Token frame,
Yeah,
right third.
Yes, I was trying to get my camera in a spot where I could actually look at it more because I feel like it was.
Well,
Anyway.
it looks wonderful. It looks wonderful.
Thank
Okay,
you.
folks, we got a busy show today. I'm guessing you won't be surprised. We're going to talk about Otherside, Otherdeed for Otherside. That's going to be our top story. We have some NFT market data from April, some of which I know Skot hasn't seen. So we'll get real-time reaction. In fact, we might just call this Skot Leach Reacts video. And we're going to talk a little bit about Johnny Walker towards the end. And Coinbase NFT Marketplace. We should talk about that and whether it's actually a thing at the moment, even though it does finally exist. But there's some question about whether it's an apparition or it's actually something real. Okay. So before we do this, everyone, please like and subscribe. I need actually some more subscribers. A lot of people are watching this, but they haven't subscribed, and so I don't get all the data that I would like to get from YouTube. So this is the first time I'm asking people, but please like and subscribe. All right. So the story of the week is definitely Otherside. All right.
Yes.
So there's so much fun stuff going on here with Otherside. For those of you who aren't really that up on this, maybe you're focused, you follow the art market, so you don't follow the big PFP collections, but Bored Ape Yacht Club decided to create a metaverse called Otherside, and they did their land minting. So there were two different ways to get land. If you were a Bored Ape or a Mutant Ape holder, you could just claim one that was starting on Sunday. But the day before, they had essentially a public sale. That public sale was based on a couple of things, but essentially you needed to have 305 ApeCoin in your wallet, and you needed to be KYC'd. So there was a lot of discussion about KYC and all these other things leading up to it, but let's just set that aside. As of, I think, Friday morning, so this was a Sunday night mint. As of Friday morning, there were like 15,000 wallets that had 305 or more ApeCoin in their wallet. So you'd say, oh, okay, they can each mint two. That's going to be 30,000. There's 55,000 plots available of land. Okay. Everyone's going to get one. By Saturday evening, there were, I don't know, something like 30,000 that had been through the process. And so there was something like 60,000. So they were definitely at a deficit. And so the limit was two. You could buy as many as two in first round. There were going to be 305 ApeCoin, which was the equivalent of 2.5 ETH as of Saturday, because ApeCoin spiked up to $23 to $25. Now, a lot of people got that ApeCoin at a lower price, but if you were buying in that day, it was the equivalent. And so they could have sold it 25 too, right? So we should look at it as each piece was going to go for 2.5 ETH. And then the question was just going in and minting, getting your gas. Now, I know you have a different story here, so we can talk about your story in a moment, but that's the setup. So 9 o'clock, people are ready to mint. $375 million in 2 hours. So there's a lot of other things we're going to talk about, but wow, right? They just took in, I think, $400 million in venture capital financing. $375 million in ApeCoin. Now, interestingly enough, I think that's locked for a year. So in other words, they've got $400 million in liquid cash from venture capitalists, and they've got $375 million that a year from now will be available for them to spend on other things, right? That also took a lot of ApeCoin out of the market, which is interesting, particularly with the fluctuation in ApeCoin right now. But it is a limited supply release, as we think about tokens out there. And, when you take this much out of, something which I think I'd have to look back at it, it's like 2 billion or something like that. And actually more than that, but it's come down. call it 2 to 4 billion in market cap. I mean, this is a significant amount to take out of circulation. So it actually should help the rest of the market come up. But just tell me your thoughts. 375 million. What do you think?
So just this number and all the other stuff aside, it's crazy to me. I don't know. I don't want to be. I think this is not sustainable. I don't think at all. But it's fascinating, and yeah, well, that's just crazy to me. That's so much money.
Okay, well, you think that's a lot of money?
Yeah,
and
I know what the next
this number.
I'm guessing this is how much was spent on gas.
That was my estimate. It was. We'll look at something in just a minute, which was basically 100 million in the first hour. It looks like about 150 million, maybe 165 million, was spent in gas. So that money made a lot of miners really wealthy. It turned out to be a significant problem for me, but we'll talk about our personal stories in just a minute. 150 million in gas. So you think about that, they did just call it 400 million, in total revenue. Yes. So that's going to be 550-ish. And, you're talking about 15 and 500 on 550. It's like, something like 25% of, not quite 25%, or it's actually more than 25. It's almost 30% of the total sale. It's just like, it's crazy.
It's totally crazy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would have rather had that money go in the pocket of Yuga, so that they could invest it back into the ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, and they made the comment. I had some interesting conversations about this with folks over the last week. They're talking now about doing their own chain, right? And how, the pitfalls of Ethereum. I also have people that were talking about the contracts themselves and how Bored Apes needs to own some of that.
Yeah.
Problem and not blame. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. Okay. So we can bring this up. So 2 days before, originally they said they were going to do a Dutch auction, but then they came back and said Dutch auctions are actually BS, right? Mm-hmm. So they just decided to do a flat price, which I think largely was welcomed. And what they'd seen with Dutch auctions, which is fair, is that there's still gas wars. They're just a little bit different, Yeah. But I think for anybody who was willing to pay a premium, it would have been a little better. And what you see usually with those Dutch auctions is initially when it opens, there's a little bit of gas pump because people just want to make sure they get it. Then there's a lull when you have gas lower, and then you have another gas war as it gets lower because people figure out what price they want to spend. Yeah. But if they had been higher, I think ultimately they would have had less gas. We don't know for sure, but they probably would have given away less in gas. Now, you brought up this other point where, hey, it wasn't really an optimized contract. And Will Papper went through, this is about the first hour. He was thinking it was 100 million burned in gas in the first hour. Now, I was there. I was, in the minting queue for a long, long time because I didn't do 2.5 ETH. If I'd put 2.5 ETH as my gas, and this was for 2, so think about that. For 2 deeds, it would be 1.25 ETH each. ETH was just under 3,000, right? So you would have been thinking about 3,800, 3,000, something like that, for close to 4,000 just in gas to buy, to then spend 5 ETH on 2 plots of land. So call it $14,000 to $15,000. Wow, that was pretty significant, and it was really interesting that there were a number of things. He just looked at the contract and said, "Hey, you could have made this better." But next thing, Vitalik responded, and that's interesting, right? So he was paying attention because, well, guess what? You could not actually do any transactions that were less than 2.5 ETH. So I was one of the people who had an ETH and a half allocated for this. So because I bought more ApeCoin because I thought I might get to the second round, which is just so silly. I only had an ETH and a half in my wallet. I was willing to spend all of it. I put it in there. That was my thing. The lowest I saw it get down to was like a couple of people, I think, might have gotten 1.7 to 1.8 ETH. And they were just lucky. Almost everyone else spent 2.2 up to 3. And, Vitalik says, hey, the market price is the price plus the transaction fee. So, frankly, if the contract had been more efficient, the pricing still probably would have been the same, just because there is a limited amount of transaction value and people would have just raised the price. Or they would have spent gas in a different way in order just to get in the queue. I was trying to move 3 ETH into my wallet, was willing to pay $1,000 to move coins, to move Ethereum into my wallet. Could not get it through. Would not go through. The only things that would go through is if you're willing to pay 2.5 ETH. I couldn't pay 2.5 ETH.
Yeah.
Money in. It was just insane.
Yeah. I mean, so here's the good news about all this. Like, the more people use it and the more problems that like this that rise up, like we've talked about this a bunch before, but this is what happens when technology is new and people start using it, and it will get better. Whether it's Ethereum that gets better, or whether another chain comes along and people hop to that. Obviously, there's lots of chains, but you know what I mean. So I think that's just how it goes.
Yeah.
I had talked to some other folks that had sort of speculated that did Bored Apes intentionally make the contract, make things clunky so that they can make a case for moving people over to their own chain. Was there some other deeper strategy to that?
I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
People would have moved over anyway, and they would know that. They know their community.
Yeah.
They're not going to mess around.
Yeah. I think the other one I just wonder about is if there's the promise of this technology, right? Blockchain and NFTs and all this stuff. And it's a lot of what we talk about. It's a lot of what has brought, I think it's why a lot of enthusiasts are here. Now, there are people that are just here, YOLOing and riding the wave. But I think if you look at this closely, and probably if you're watching this show, you know there's something to this, right? Right now, this sort of, whether we want to say it or not, the speculative aspect is what's bringing a lot of people to the space. So the opportunity to make money. And so now you have situations where that gas, people made money from the gas fee. So all these people are making money in different ways, right? But lately, I've been hearing so much talk about this with all projects. Like, when's the floor going to do this? Why aren't the founders doing this to get the price up? The emphasis on that, it's just not healthy. I think we need to get back to like starting to see some real utility use cases, so that the longer it takes for us to get there, the more opportunity there is for this, whatever's happening. I know I'm not supposed to say the bubble word and scare people, but like this cannot last. Like, it's going to change. And
well, I think it already has changed. I think there's a number of projects there's a few projects which are what we would call blue chip or blue chip adjacent. Maybe there's a much larger number of those, which are doing relatively well, and they haven't hit much of a recession. Almost everything else is down significantly. And so I think particularly in those projects, people are looking for like, okay, what's going to happen here next? Now, you and I have this idea that if this is actually a long-term play and not just a gamified investing, right? That if you're going to hold into a space, it doesn't actually matter what the floor is.
Yes.
Right? As long as the project is properly funded and they can actually bring all of these great utility functions to the market, then just hang out. If you've got plans to sell because it's really just an investment thing and you're going to be a trader, as opposed to a holder, then it is a bit of an issue for them. But, if you're going to be speculating, there's basically two strategies, not financial advice, folks, right now. Get in early. Certainly best is pre-mint, right after mint. Flip when you can take your profit early. Long-term bet on things you think are underpriced. And long-term might be weeks, could be months, probably not a year in that type of horizon. And then go after blue chips. You think that right after the blue chip has retreated, and you think it'll go up. Like we saw mutants up to 25 before ApeCoin dropped. They went down to like 13, sort of settled in around 15. And then they were up to 35 before Otherside deeds. And then now they're back down to 25, which is interesting. The retreat is always at sort of the new high, or the old. It comes back to the old high. What it looks like. So, some people are definitely doing that. But those are essentially the strategies if you're going to do it. But I'm much more interested. I feel like it's the Warren Buffett approach, right? Buy and hold, value based, and being involved with things that you want to be affiliated with because you think that there's something you personally want out of it, or that you just think it's going to be something successful because they've got the great team, they've got the great IP, they've got the great idea.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coins, that applies to both. I think NFTs are tricky because it is so early and so new. It's hard to know what the long-term play with some of these things are. So I do think in a way, I think there's more risk, and in another way, sometimes not, because they're trying to do things and there's roadmaps and evidence of that. Now, it's really scary to me concerning that Bored Apes is able to generate 375 million on really nothing yet. They say it's a metaverse. We have some little images and we have some attributes
and a really cool sizzle reel.
Yes. And that said, like, the team has delivered up to now. So I think that's it delivered in terms of continued to release projects and keep people excited and get investors. So like they're doing something that's holding people's interests. But it's just, we've all gotten comfortable, whatever the toad in the boiling pot of water metaphor is, that you the water's pretty hot and we're not noticing it because we've been in here for a while. Our risk tolerance is kind of higher and higher. But who am I to complain? Like since I had my Bored Ape, I've gotten a Kennel Club, a Serum, Ape Coins, Otherside deed lands. Now it's like, I'm terrified to sell it.
Yeah.
I
just think there's more to come, from them. They sort of have the magic touch. They're really well funded. Yeah. Aside from the fact that they have, we'll talk about this in a minute, they've just a lot of transaction volume. And so they're getting their 5% royalty on all that. They've got this new area for Otherdeeds, huge amount of transaction volume over the weekend and a little bit this week. So they're well funded. They're making all the right moves. They've made some mistakes. I think they're not making macro execution mistakes. They're making micro execution mistakes. It's around some of these events. So the event like this was a mistake, and we can contrast it pretty easily with what Proof did with the what are the guy now? It's just like totally
Moonbirds.
With Moonbirds, Oh, by the way, just this isn't even a disclaimer. This is a claimer. I was really flattered that Kevin Rose chose the owl after we chose the owl for Niftorian. I mean, we had that back in October. We did our first mint, for in November, so yeah.
And the great thing about blockchain is you can prove that.
Exactly. So we were out, and plus we've got Twitter stuff all over the place, right? So we've got a lot of previews and things like that. And he decided that he couldn't compete with our level of art. because it is really
love it.
good. I mean,
Yeah.
Matthew Curry killed it. And so he went to the pixel art, which was a really smart thing, because he's really focused on just the value of it. It's not as much about, so that's like,
Yes.
so owls, I guess there's 2 owl projects. I think we're both equivalent, but we just haven't done our big mint yet. So just wait. But that aside, sort of ridiculous, but the, what they did is they did basically an allow list.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. It was basically 2.5 ETH. You had to have it in your wallet. If you had it in there, they gave away to existing, kind of like we have claims for Bored Ape and Mutants, and it worked fine. Those people just came in with a couple of days to grab it.
Totally. Yeah. And this is a spot that I know I bring this up a lot. Vaynerchuk does a good job of this, right? Like the Series 2 thing, every time this is all clunky, but the fact that he and his team are trying new things and they're really working hard to educate people. There's a lot of people that make noise when the mint is happening, but if you look a little bit around, there's lots of education there.
Yeah.
This thing that happens with Bored Apes, this kind of cryptic, mysterious drop thing, it's neat. It creates hype and enthusiasm, but like, we're talking about a lot of money now. Like, I think we can say
so
everything we want.
Gary's got a different audience, right? So I heard him talking about this today. I was listening to Kevin Rose's recent interview with Gary, and I recommend anybody listening to this, go check that out. So it's Proof Podcast, Kevin Rose, and he was talking to Gary just this past week, and they were talking about Moonbirds and VeeFriends. But he said, from VeeFriends, he said, I'm very cognizant of the fact that for a significant portion of VeeFriends holders, the VeeFriends NFT that they hold is their most valuable asset of all the things that they own in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm not going to help them with the floor because I'm playing this long term. I'm not going to be like floor this week. I'm going to work towards making sure that piece is really valuable. But he said, I understand this. And I think if you look at Bored Ape, that's probably also true that for a significant portion of the Bored Ape holders, mutant holders, it is the most valuable item that they own, more valuable than a car, more valuable. Like someone just said, should I sell my
more valuable than their house?
Would I rather have a mutant or would I rather have a Tesla? Because basically they're the same price. And for a lot of people, more valuable than their house. So if they have a house, but I also think that the Bored Ape world there's an assumption that it's not newbies. There's an assumption that they're more savvy. They're in more projects. They've been doing this longer. A lot of the VeeFriends people are involved in other projects, but there's many VeeFriends people that VeeFriends might be one or two things that they own.
Yeah. Yeah. But even, and that makes sense to me to a degree. And I'm all for like, hey, I know the stage we're at. Like, this is the Wild West, and that means lots of opportunity and a tremendous amount of risk. But we're talking about 350 grand. I don't care if you're rich or not. That's a shitload of money. And like, you need to, I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm pointing the finger and saying shame on them or anything like that, but I think everyone in this community has to up the, like, all this, we're all going to make it, all this like good GM talk about how everyone loves each other. Like, then fuck, man, take care of each other. Like, look at your Instagram got hacked, and that led to lots of people getting scammed out of their apes. Like,
that was,
take some.
I wasn't even prepared to talk about it, but that was crazy. If you didn't hear this, the Bored Ape Yacht Club Instagram was hacked. Someone put a link in there. They basically put a cryptic message, special claim. And then I think, was it 6 apes that were lost or something like that before people sniffed it out and they said, don't do it. It was a few. It wasn't,
it wasn't
like
it
30.
wasn't huge, but
Yeah. So, but I will say that Hugo often does the right thing. Now, granted, someone told me they had refunded like $350,000. And this was people who had tried to purchase, they went through, but they got hit up with gas and didn't get any deeds. So they raised $350 million. They send $350,000. Maybe it turns out to be $1.5 million, whatever it is back. good on them. I'm glad
Yeah.
they do it. It's like,
Yep.
we're talking about less than 1% of what they took in, but still they didn't have to do that.
Yeah, no, this is good. Yeah.
Okay.
One other
Well,
thing that I wanted to say real quick
go
before,
for it.
when we're talking about the ways, the sort of rationale for why people get into NFTs, and you were saying like the Warren Buffett strategy of buying and holding. There is something else for smaller stuff, and you're probably seeing it on Niftorian and other, obviously one of one artists. But some of these smaller communities, it is important that they get some activity up front, because that's what's funding the project to a degree, right? So another thought that I think about sometimes, and that if you're getting into this, you might consider, is like, what will your decision to mint something may help a project that you believe in. So yeah, I think that's just something else to keep in mind, that the activity early on of you as a holder actually influences the project in a way that you're part of it. And that to me
You mean if you
feels,
sell it or something else?
just the fact that you choose to participate in it at all.
This is very true. I mean, so particularly like Discord, and what you see is particularly last fall, but you still see it. A lot of the Discord you'll see for new projects, it's really just ridiculous little posts, people
Mhm,
trying to just get credit from whatever bot is figuring out how many posts to let them rank up so they
mhm,
get to a whitelist or something like that. But those aside, like all these other communities, like if you actually just go in and engage every day, every other day, twice a week, whatever it is, and start to get to know some of the other people in that community, it actually makes a material difference for
yeah,
that community longer term.
absolutely, yeah, and you really can influence a project,
Yeah,
you know? I mean,
absolutely.
buying into it's great too, but that back behind me, that, or this shoulder now,
Yeah.
that, Average Creatures,
I know you
I
love that. There's
just
what,
claim
20 of them?
I hold a bunch of them. I think I hold like 50 of them, because I wanted to support the project, and I love the artwork, and I love the fact that it's an artist that's hand making stuff. And
Yeah.
every time I post anything about Average Creatures on Twitter or anywhere else, all those holders come and like it and comment, and it starts a conversation.
So it's a good community.
Yeah, and it's like genuine. It's not this like, "Oh, yeah, I'm following you because hashtag, and this is what we do to all get more followers." It just feels good to be a part of something like that, and yeah, it's cool.
Okay, so this just goes to another piece, like to get a sense of what I look at when I'm looking at projects. I look at a lot of projects, some of which I know that I have no intention of buying into, but I just want to know what's going on, see what's happening. Like people recommend something to me, I drop in. What I look at now is I do look at how many people are in there, but I
Mhm,
look at the velocity of conversation and the type of conversation. So if it's a post where someone's just saying things or just asking for, how do I get on the white list or whatever like that, I totally
mhm,
dismiss it. I don't, in that point, it's less important. And so, if you think about what you would do with like Instagram influencers a little while ago, you would look at not just followers, but you look at engagement rate.
yep,
So you look at their posts, what percentage of engagement. So there are a number of big influencers who had like 1 million, 2 million followers on Instagram, but they might have like a 0.1 engagement, 1.1% engagement rate. It's just like terrible. And you see some others that had 100,000 and they might have a 10 to 12% engagement rate. Well, which influencer do you want to work with? I mean, they both get you basically the same amount of traction in the marketplace on a nominal basis.
mhm,
But that one it's getting over 10% engagement rate, their fans actually care about them.
yep, yep,
So in
yeah,
any event, and I think that that's what I'm looking at in Discords now more so. I do want to know that there's people in there, right? Like that
mhm,
there's people of care. But there are so many of these Discords where you've got 20, 30, 50, even 100,000 people in there and no one's paying attention to it. And
yeah,
it's just BS. And so then
yeah,
then I said, "Oh, Jesus, is going to be around for the long term."
yeah, yeah, there's a difference between momentum and noise versus actual, yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Let's keep moving. So we just want to talk about some top line numbers on Otherdeed. So as of this morning, there were sales almost $800 million in sales of Otherdeeds. This is secondary. Floor price right there, 3.4 ETH, although it's gone up a little bit since then. I think it's closer to 4 as we're starting to record. That'll change by the time you watch this probably. But I thought this was cool. 60,000 active wallets. There's 97,000 mints. That mint lands, by the way, that figure is how many went out in the public sale. And then 97,000, the difference between those reflects the claims by mutants and Bored Apes.
Got it. Yeah.
So you've got, when I look at that active wallet, so we'll call it 59 out of 97, we'll call that 60% ownership. Some people think about wallets to total. So there's a lot of people involved here.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people who did get 2 sold 1. And that's what that tells me as well. And then there's some other whales who are accumulating a lot right now.
Yeah.
But and the other number I thought was really interesting. So is CryptoSlam has this algorithm that tries to figure out wash sales, and this is really high on a lot of these projects. I mean, we're talking about 1% wash sales. I mean, this is not. It's negligible, right? It's 7 million seems like a lot, but out of 770 million, it's like basically nothing. All right, so let's go. The other thing I thought we'd look at is activity chart. Now, this is like there's so much activity in here. This is just like a 12-minute snapshot from earlier today, but it's instructive. And we're recording this at Cinco de Mayo, so if you guys wonder, what the time frame is we're looking at. But I wanted to point out that there's like these different price points. So some you can see there we're going for under 4 ETH, and some are going for 10 ETH. Now, how do we know which ones are valuable? So there's 2 things that are going on with these cards. I don't think I have one to show today, but one is there are different rarities, and you can actually see if you look at the card or the NFT, there's dots at the top, 1 through 5. So a dot, if it just says 1 dot, it's the least rare, and therefore you'd assume least valuable. And then if it has 5, the most rare, most valuable. And then the other thing that is worth looking at is codas. And so most of those ones that are going for 10 ETH might have a coda attached to them. And the codas look like this. It's not clear exactly what this means, but they are a significant rarity. It was basically lottery. They came with some of the land parcels and they didn't come with others. If you got a coda, I mean, look at that. You're 2.5 to 3 times more valuable than sort of your run-of-the-mill NFT. But I don't know if you want to comment on any of those things we just talked about. But out there.
This stuff was neat. I like the level of the codas and all the stuff they added and how much it really affected the price. It made it feel deeper for me and made me want to look more closely at it. I got 2 deeds that were granted to me, so I was able to just claim them. And one was a 1 dot, whatever you say it, whatever tier, and the other one was 4.
Whoa!
And I couldn't figure out what it meant because I was like,
"What's the offer?
A high offer.
What's your offer on that one?"
I think the highest offer I have is around 8.
Yeah, because
when I tried to look,
and the other one's probably just under 4, like 3.5, between 3.5 and 4.
Yeah.
I got a 2. I was not that excited. Plus I sort of got housed in the in the public land sale.
Yes.
And it was funny. Roger Kibbe, some people know him, the Kipster, on Discord. He looked at it. He immediately accelerated gas to 2.5. They just like, I want them. And you know what? What it turned out to be is, so it's 3.75. So gas plus the price, 305 ape coin on that day. Oh, what's the price of them today? Like he break even, but actually did better than that because he sold one of them. Shortly thereafter, took most of the stuff back off the table. So then he has one that he got for free claim, and then he's holding one. So it turns out to be a pretty good deal. And I think, I suspect these are going to increase in value. What we don't know today is how they're going to be used in this metaverse, but there's a game element to it. And so that's why the different parcels of land have different potential benefit. Obviously there's mutant ones versus ape ones. They have different characteristics. We don't know
Yeah.
the distance from different things. People like your land at a 1 dot or 2 dot might turn out to be very valuable because someone
Sure.
adjacent to you wants to get a bigger plot.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
Yeah, this is a thing that I think a lot of people that haven't been doing the land thing yet that are dipping into it. And part of my comment earlier when I said how cryptic they were about this project doesn't really say anything about what's going on. You could get really strategic if you were looking at Decentraland or Sandbox, especially early on, to figure out, okay, where might there be? Because like you said, if someone builds next to you and they build something amazing, your real estate goes up. It's like real world, right?
I think there's an arbitrage opportunity right now between
Yeah.
Otherside and Decentraland Sandbox, because those have been flat to down, particularly
Yeah.
Decentraland's not. So, and they actually haven't had that much building going on in those spaces, whereas it looks like because of the gaming utility, Otherside is probably going to take off a little faster.
Yeah, well, but that's where I still have questions though, right? Because if it's a game and if the plots are one size, are you going to be able to our big business is going to have the notion of a presence there? Or
Well,
is
maybe
it
it's a game plus a community, right?
yeah.
Maybe you can build, like, maybe I could sell my thorn,
Yeah.
my
There was something
thornbush
cool
lands.
about when Sandbox was doing their land sales last year. I mean, they do them periodically, but in the summer, there was this week of like land sales or month where every week they do a land sale. And it was cool because you'd see like the premium plots that they worked on with collabs. So you'd
Yes.
be like, oh, there's a Bored Apes one. And and this was when Bored Apes was like not, I think the floor was 4 maybe or something. So when you were going to pick your land, you could be like, oh, I want to be near that project, see what they're doing. That made that whole process really fun and exciting. Obviously, these guys don't need it, but just something else to consider if this interested you in land. There's other land projects that are probably worth checking out. That could be interesting.
Okay, we just spent 35 minutes talking about Otherside, so we're going to move on.
Yeah.
I want to talk about market data. So we haven't done that in a while, but
Mhm.
we have data through the end of April. So the first thing I just want to talk about is registered users on OpenSea. OpenSea still probably 60%, maybe 65%, depending on the week. Actually, this past week, they were probably 80% of all NFTs sold just because of Otherside. But if we look at the total wallet, so this is always going to be up and to the right because you don't lose the wallet. I guess people could decommission, but that's not usually what's happening or cancel their account. We're up to about 1.6 million people on OpenSea that have made at least one transaction. So they bought an NFT, or they've sold an NFT because they got it from somewhere else. But like I think that's really interesting, and you can see at the very top there. It actually starting in late February, the vertical how vertical the ramp is started to taper off, but it's actually not that much. It's still a really steep ramp. So I think that's a good sign. And monthly active traders. So forget about this one all the way to the right. That's actually the first part of May, which is also pretty extraordinary. This is also impacted by Otherdeed sales, but that's only 5 days, not even. That's 4.5 days into the month. So you can imagine that this is going to grow significantly. So it looks like May is going to be much higher than April. But look at April. April is down from January, February, which were both extraordinarily high months in terms of total tokens traded. Up from March. March was down a little bit. April came back up. So actually, from a activity standpoint, a lot going on.
Yeah. I mean, depending on who you talk to, you keep hearing different stories, but there was as of January, I kept hearing all these NFTs are dead.
Yeah, well, January was
Yeah.
insane. Now, so and when we look at OpenSea, we don't have to worry about all the looks rare wash trading skewing our numbers.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I mean, look at where May's on track. Obviously, that's I mean, I gotta think that is due in large part to what we just spent 34 minutes talking about.
There was a lot of activity on. So basically, you could start trading a little bit Saturday evening, but it was May 1st, very quickly, and that's when most of those transactions happen. So that's a lot. There's some other things going on, but that's a big part of it. Okay, so let's look at the total NFTs sold last month. So that other big line there. Forget about the one to the right. That's the first 5 days of the month.
Yep.
So we approached February numbers in April.
Yep.
So what seemed like a slower month was actually pretty good. Now, I would say the second half of April was actually much better than the second half of February, because February was very heavily influenced by January. It's basically the first 6 weeks of the year were really heavy, and then a strong taper in the second half. So we had basically 6 weeks going through the end of March, which were quite a bit down. And then things started to pick back up, and April was a lot steadier.
Yep. Yep.
All right. And then our daily volume, I don't usually show daily volume because it gets skewed, but I just wanted to show that skew. That giant number right there, this is Ethereum volume. That is May 1st. So that's all the Otherside volume.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. And I want to throw a couple things out here too. Polygon, our friendly layer 2 folks. So this is active traders. So we're down from January, as we would expect, up a little bit. So the monthly active traders on Polygon are about the same. But look at this, like total NFTs sold way, way down. So there was some programs that were run in January that got a ton of activity that carried over into February. But I mean, it's cratered in terms of activity on Polygon. So Polygon doesn't have as much volume overall in terms of dollar value, but they do sell. There's a lot of NFTs. Look at that, like 2 million, because they're doing the 1155s with the airdrops and all these other things. But you're going to have to assume that it's hit driven, that there's a few things that are really driving that. And I mean, I want to keep looking at this, because if May is low, this could be that people have said, hey, we've played with Polygon. Maybe it's not the best thing, and we're just going to focus elsewhere. But this is the barometer for layer 2.
Yeah. Do you have Solana on here?
I don't have Solana on here.
So I noticed this last couple weeks, it's been happening for a while. I want to say since around just before the OpenSea announcement that they were going to start supporting Solana. I got into a project called DGods that someone had told me about. I think it was 90 ETH, or 90 ETH, geez, 90 Sol when I got into it. So that's not inexpensive. Sol's lingering around $100. So at that time, like for a Solana NFT, that was like a big deal.
So that's like
those
3
are
ETH.
up. Yeah, those are those have been at 300, lingering between 250 and 300 Sol for the last couple weeks.
So 30K US?
Yes. And another project, OK Bears. I want to make sure I say it right and don't give someone else credit. OK Bears on Solana launched on Magic Eden. That's one of their marketplaces. Yeah. I think they were minting for like 3 Sol or something like that. They're up to, within the first day, they got up over 50 Sol, and they're currently at 128 Sol is the floor on this. They launched 2 weeks ago.
Wow. Their secondary.
In fact, there's an article that it was one of the fastest growing, or I did more volume than even like an Ethereum project in a short period of time. But that was just before the Apes Otherside launched. So obviously that news got dwarfed really quickly. But Solana is feeling like Ethereum, or like OpenSea or Ethereum was feeling last year at this time. It's really interesting to watch.
Wow, that's quite a statement.
Yes, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but I'm seeing the same sort of like enthusiasm that happened last.
Okay, so you got me thinking, right? So
it's worth checking out, and I think there's so many people on there.
Yeah.
What I found is Solana is a great way to introduce people to NFTs, because you can do some stuff without getting stung by gas.
Yeah.
There's lots of stuff that's really cheap, worth checking out.
Yeah. It's quite a statement though. You feel like that's interesting.
Yeah, well,
Which should mean there's going to be something like 1,000 projects that are going to pump soon.
well, yeah. So Rob Oshima, who's a buddy of mine and who's in our Mystics Discord, he's part of a project called SkateX, and they're building a skate game, kind of Tony Hawk Pro Skater style game. I've actually, full disclosure, I've been helping them out, advising them a little bit on NFT strategy. Before I ever started talking to them, they released, I think 1,080, 1,080 boards, so that you'll use in the game, and they sold that project out. And yeah, it's just sort of watching them go through that process and seeing what some other people are doing on there. Like, there's definitely something happening. And I think as these gas wars and stuff happen, there's more people that are taking shots over there. Anyway, worth looking at.
And on Solana, you should be looking more towards utility-based projects.
Lots of gaming projects. Yeah.
There might be some other utilities, but a lot of gaming, less art. But like we didn't talk about art at all so far today. So, and I should just I'll just close this out. So this was the NFT sold on Polygon. So you see April there, sort of, it's like cratered. But if we go to the total volume, the dollar volume, not off, off, but not off by as much, right? So that's also interesting to me, and something I want to keep track of, is that what we're starting to see is higher prices per NFT on Polygon, which has not been a thing.
Yeah. You've not shown us volume for ETH yet, have you?
I did, actually.
Oh, you did? Okay. We did see that one.
I'll bring it back up. So
no, I wanted to make sure.
Open.
I was blabbing.
You want, what do you want? You want Ethereum, or do you want?
I just couldn't remember if we looked at that one yet already. No, we're good.
Yes. Oh no, I didn't. I don't have it in here, actually.
I didn't know if you were waiting for that was going to be like a surprise finish, and I was going to.
It's actually it's very similar to the total NFT.
I figured. Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's up from last month, but still below January, February. And what we'll do is at the end of this month, we do some additional analysis there, and like average price per NFT and stuff like that. We'll do that at the end of this month. We haven't done that in a bit. Okay, so let's move on. Let's put market data behind us, but that was fun to talk about. The first thing I thought we'd talk about marketplace is some news that you and I have. Let's see. We've not talked about Coinbase NFT market.
Yes.
So this is my page, my profile page. You can see I'm following 2 and 7 people are following me. So, this might be a commentary on me, or it might be a commentary on activity on Coinbase NFT overall. I did send out a tweet a couple days ago saying I'm having trouble incorporating Coinbase and looking at Coinbase NFT marketplace into my daily habits. Right. I'm looking at a lot of NFT stuff every day, and I always forget about it. And I hadn't looked at it in a week. I pull it up. So I sent this tweet out, and it was basically universal. Everyone's like, I set up my account and I haven't looked at it since. And then someone's like, oh yeah, I should check mine. So this is where I brought up this thing. Yeah. Is it a real marketplace, or is it an apparition? I mean, it's early yet. We always like to say that, but it is early. It's only been available for a couple of weeks. I'm just not seeing a lot of things going on there.
Yeah. All this stuff is hard, and because I've been working in this space professionally, I know that there's lots of people working diligently on this. So I don't want to take from that. But this, I feel like this was supposed to come out end of last year originally, right?
Yeah, Q4.
Okay. This doesn't seem like very much right now. I'm not saying what's there is bad necessarily. I'm just saying that there's not a lot there. I mean, everyone's gave LooksRare a hard time. Not just, I know the incentives and wash trading stuff and all that, but in general, they're like, oh,
so there was a lot.
Even sort by such and such. I mean, there's this is pretty barren right now.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm with you. I haven't really touched it or used it at all.
Well, I don't have an incentive to go there. At least with looks,
Mm-hmm.
there are a couple features there. If you want to buy into a project, you could just bid on a project. You could sell off of project blanket bids. So that was good. They have the staking mechanic, which also gave a reason to check it out. Now, I'm not going to Looksrare a lot either. It's more, I'm sometimes when I think about it, which should be the same with Coinbase NFT, but also if I'm looking at a particular project, I just want to see what sort of floor offers are there, or if I want to make one of those. So I'm going there for the functionality. But everyone was really excited about Coinbase. I heard someone talking about this today, like saying, hey, you know what? You know what's going on in this market? We're all trading ETH back and forth between each other, and a bunch of it's getting sucked away by the miners, right? So he said we're not growing fast enough. But no, if you look at the OpenSea wallets, that's not quite right. That's his sentiment, right? Someone in Twitter Spaces, very sharp guy. Certainly there are more people coming in, but I think this was the promise of Coinbase Marketplace, was to bring more people in and a bunch of newbies into the space and make it easy for them to on-ramp. I'm not seeing that yet. It seems like right now it's really just for people who are in the market. They've looked at that. They have a lot of other places to make trades. So that's where they're doing it. But we haven't seen this rush of people in. And they had 2.5 million, or no, they were up to 4 million pre-reg on that. I also had a couple people respond to my Twitter saying, hey, wait, it's not available in my country. So, they also have that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad it's there. I'm glad it's out in the world, because now I think they're going to have to start addressing it and rolling new stuff out. But I'm not looking at it.
Okay, well, if anybody's out there and they're on Coinbase, I'm at Creatorious, and are you at Skot Leach on?
Just Skot, SKOT.
Oh, look at you. So first name, I guess there's not that many people competing for the SKOT, but so follow us, Creatorious and Skot, on that. I think that this is going to be a thing. It's just there's no reason to draw people in other than they just wanted to be there.
Yeah. One thing I don't like right off the bat is I get all these spam NFTs, right? And they appear. OpenSea's figured out how to hide the ones that are spam, but I have the inverse problem with LinkedIn, or LinkedIn. Geez Louise.
Oh, I had a spam NFT today that's showing up on OpenSea, but largely, yes, they're doing a good job.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, I want to switch over from that. We'll come back to Coinbase. I'm sure we'll talk about them again. But we want to talk about, because why not? We always talk about it, VeeFriends, but you have some specific information. In fact, you're going to be receiving that bottle of Johnny Walker Blue Label with those special etchings. Wow. This is what I expected when Gary Vee said he was going to do Gift Goat. I was thinking about these really cool brand integrations. You may or may not like whiskey, but Johnny Walker Blue probably goes for $275, $300 for that bottle normally. I'm sure with this special customization, it's going to be even better.
Yeah, and there's going to be some sort of marketplace, some sort of means by which you can sell this. So that's normally really tricky to do. But they're going to be set up some sort of market so you can do that. So for people that aren't into it, they'll still have that opportunity. But yeah, I think this is awesome. And this is exactly, I'm right with you. When he announced the Gift Go, this was the kind of stuff I was imagining. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, and what a great idea for Blue Label or for Johnny Walker. I mean, they're, I don't know how many Gift Goats there are, but there's 555 tokens, but maybe that's 300 people. I don't know. So they get exposed for this. It's like they get detached to what's a pretty good culture brand now, VeeFriends, and they can, if anybody just notices Blue Label off of that, and they sell a few incremental bottles, it actually adds up very quickly. In fact, they could sell out because they don't actually have that many bottles of Blue Label in any given year.
Yeah, yeah. We've talked about this before. I think one of the really solid use cases for utility we've seen on NFTs as well as this notion of an NFT representing a barrel of spirits or a
Yeah.
bottle, and then you could trade that, and then if someone wants to claim it, they can. It's like a really clever way to handle a problem.
Yeah.
Um, so even though this isn't that, the fact that it's getting them into that space and getting drinkers of their product to start thinking about it that way and considering NFTs, it's yeah, I think it's really smart.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. It's really cool, and I look at that bottle and I'm like, ah, that's a work of art, right? So that's like
Mhm.
the bottle then is a collectible, and I think that bottle is going to have a lot of value, particularly among people who are into VeeFriends. I think
Yes.
3 or 4 years from now, when people are trying to collect like NFT archaeologists, trying to have part of their collection. I just sent you
Yeah.
something that I thought was really interesting. We were talking about Ali Sabet is
Mhm.
doing something. I think it's with his Bored Ape because you have rights to do things with your Bored Ape.
Mhm.
But he's
Mhm.
doing. You get 2 bottles of vodka. It's like Trust and something else, and and it's got the Bored Ape in the style in his style
Mhm.
behind it, and then he signs every bottle before he sends them out.
Yeah,
So it's a little alpha for you folks out there. Go to I think it's Sabet.art, but just look up Ali Sabet NFT and
yeah,
you'll find it.
that's very cool. Yeah, so in addition to that, with the Blue Label, they also sent out uh, one of our NFT. So this DK, the artist DK, an NFT from them. That's a cool little their style of work with Gary kind of rocking out or working there during the day, and then it flips over to a nighttime scene with some music and really cool. Each one of these gifts has come with a NFT, and it's usually from an artist that does mostly one of ones or limited edition runs. Um, he's talked about it. Obviously, you're about art and artists. I really like that he's choosing to include
Yeah.
work by artists, and these are like they're branded under the VeeFriends mini drops, so they kind of fly under the radar. But there's some really great stuff in really limited numbers. I think that's going to be a big deal in the long run, and it's just cool. It's sort of I like that he's supporting those folks, and it's great for those of us that are able to receive those as gifts. But there's an
Oh,
opportunity there. If people are looking for art, if there's artists whose work you can't get into, check out the Mini Friends drops and see if any of them are in there because there's some really cool stuff in there that I don't think a lot of people are aware of.
right. So you've gotten NFTs and you've gotten physical
Yep.
with NFTs. My
Yep.
guess is the NFTs alone that you've received are probably worth more than 10 ETH right now
Yeah, I would say
combined.
they varied between 5 and 10 depending on
Oh, really? So and you've received 5 items at this point?
no, total value, I think between 5 and 10.
Oh,
Yeah,
between 5
5,
and 10.
yeah.
Right.
And some are worth a little more than others, but yeah, there's it's
And the price most people paid for Gift Goat
the
was
floor on the gift card was 5 at the very end. So,
right.
and they got to the floor. It was the last NFT to go.
Crazy.
And he had made a comment at that point that like, I'm going to make people regret not getting this thing at
And
this
then they went
price.
like that after
Yes.
he said it. Yeah, they were at 5 ETH for a few days. They were hanging out there.
Yeah.
Um, Now 5 ETH at that time was at a time when Ethereum was really high as well. So I think they may have gotten down to 12 to 15,000. Closer to 15
Yeah.
probably. Um, they, for a good part of that, they were over 20 at that price. But
Mhm.
because ETH had like a local maximum in there around 4,000. But it was a lot of money, particularly at that time when people didn't know that other than punks things could go that high.
Yeah.
Punks in a few of the art blocks were doing that, but these other big collections were not.
Yeah.
So in any event, so I would say that the clearing price for gift goats, certainly some people paid at 15, but it was probably the average was somewhere in the 8 to 9 range. So
Mhm.
1 year in, they're probably even just on what they've received back.
Yeah. Yeah. Not even including the floor price on the goat, which is been
Well,
all over the place, but I think one sold yesterday for 39 or 40 or something.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think we were sort of marveling at it about 4 or 5 months ago that they were at 29, and we're like, oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
They've just held value, and they've held value, and they've held value in a way that a lot of the other VeeFriends tokens have not. But anybody who's in VeeFriends or who's thinking about just getting exposure to the project, Gary said today that he's going to be, or he said this week on the pod interview with Kevin Rose, that he's going to be looking at how long people have held them. So if you're an original minter, it might be an added incentive for you that there might be some special things that come to you in future years for being there since the beginning, or if you buy it now, being there for multiple years. Just keep that in mind. And the floor on the VeeFriends 2, which there are a couple different ways you could get them, but let's just say a lot of people have them now. I think there's 50 some odd thousand of those. There's a couple of things going on. Like a lot of people are getting the card game. That's going to be coming out. But apparently there's some things too that he wants to make sure that people think those are valuable, and those are really low. They've come down a lot. I think they're like 0.5 in some cases, right? So that's a really inexpensive way for you to get exposure to the project.
Yeah. And not financial advice, but again, based on the criteria we talked about earlier, if you look at what VeeFriends is doing in terms of his long-term strategy, the utility, what the project represents, and what he's supporting, for me, that the combination of all those things are what really sold me on it.
Got it. Okay, before we close out, you want to make a comment about CEX?
Oh, I was at CEX earlier this week with Rally, talking to some Rally creators. Yeah, it was just a good time.
A conference run by a Rally creator.
Yeah, conference run by a creator, all creators there. It was the first year they did it. It was neat. I talked to some of the Rally creators who I've seen on plenty of Zoom calls, but meeting in real life was nice.
Well, you and I, our first IRL will be in Minneapolis coming up.
That's right. Yes, in a few weeks. Yeah, I presented some stuff around NFTs and how creators might think about them. Brian Fanzo and I sat and answered questions about just NFTs in general, and his 365 podcast. It was good. It was a lot of fun. It was nice to be out in the world talking to folks, and really cool to see how some of these creators are thinking about NFTs and just getting up to speed so quickly. Yeah, it's encouraging. I'm excited.
All right. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad we're getting out there. I should tell people, if you're going to be at VCon and you watch this, let us know. Just hit the comments for the video, or Skot you can DM Skot or just ping him on Twitter at Skot Leach, or me at CreatoriousRex. We're going to try to get a few people together at some point in VCon. We're figuring that out now. But we'd love to see people. That's a time for us to get together. So
yeah, absolutely.
But we can't get together if we don't know who you are.
Yes.
All right, folks. I'm CreatoriousRex. He's Skot Leach. This has been the TWINN This Week in NFT News. Like and subscribe below. That would be really appreciated. Go to niftorian.com. We're doing some really cool things with NFT fine art. If I have a prediction, we've had the year of collectibles. There's going to be more collectibles things. Fewer of those are going to be successful, but artists are starting to figure this out. And later this year and next year, look for fine art and NFTs to really be the center of attention. All right, folks. Till next week, happy hunting.